Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm checking out a very unusual quadcopter indeed. This is called the L160 V2 from gearbest.com, and I guess you would say it is a 250 size quadcopter. Now it's called the L160, so I guess that's 160 millimeters from motor to motor, but if I take a 230 sized quadcopter, it's of very similar size. Now, this is very similar to the Flex RC Owl. However, I don't think it's a direct copy because its design is pretty different. Just look at all these standoffs here. There is just so many. In fact, I have lost one already. There should be one there, but that is probably my fault. And that is because I have had to take it apart. And there's a couple of discrepancies with this model. So on the GearBest website, it says it's a bind and fly, but it's not because it doesn't come with a receiver. They do acknowledge, though, that even though there is pictures of it with a camera and VTX, that it does not come with a camera or VTX. So it's actually designed for a proper CCD camera and a VTX with a SMA adapter on it so that it is bulletproof. That's the idea. But I've completely not gone with that theme because I don't have a spare camera or VTX. So what I've done is taken the top off, switched the top plate around, and the holes for the VTX I have used to poke one of these all-in-one cameras through. So this is the FX797T with its case on. I just stuck it at the front there, and I understand that in a crash that is going to get absolutely annihilated. But the way that they intend this to work is, you see these slots here, you're given this camera plate, and that is to sit under there, and then you can put a board cam in and angle it and things like that, and it's meant to be completely bulletproof. Now, it looks carbon fiber and it's got carbon fiber plates, but it's another one of these that has got a carbon fiber veneer, and then I think it's wood in the middle, it's hard to tell, and then carbon fiber underneath as well. So it's fairly lightweight. It weighs 245 grams without a battery. You aren't given a battery, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. One thing that is really strange about this model is the component choices. So this is a 4-inch blade, and it's using 1306 motors. I don't know if you can see there, I don't know if the camera will get the focus. 1306, 3100 kV motors, which you might think is a small motor for a model of this size, and you'd be right, because 1306 motors usually fit a 3-inch blade, not a 4-inch. And this is an oversight from whoever put this package together. They have given these 4-inch blades, so they are bullnose blades, but they have the hole to fit a 5-inch motor. So they haven't given the bracket for these 4-inch blades to go on these 1306 motors. Luckily, I have some brackets myself, so I was able to rectify that. But if you've just bought this as it is, because I know it's like £100 or something like that, then you aren't going to be able to use these blades because they aren't going to center properly, so you need some proper brackets. That is a shame. Now, talking about strange components, it's almost like they've picked components from the 1970s with this model. I say that, but, you know, they're just like a couple of years old or something. The ESCs are Simon K ESCs. They're only 6 amps, so again, 1306 motors, 3100 kV with just 6 amp ESCs there. We'll have to see if it goes up in flames, won't we? But that's what I'm going to check out. You can see here that we have got 3 wires coming from the ESCs, and these ESCs have a built-in Beck, which is old school, isn't it? But Simon K ESCs, I guess, are a bit old school, and the flight control is also old school. It is a CC 3D flight controller, so it came flashed with Libre Pilot. Now, I am not an expert at that at all, so I have gone and flashed it with Betaflight, and the reason that it has got these becks in here is that it is actually powering the CC3D from the ESCs. So you can see there that the ESCs plug in there and the signal wire plugs in there. Now what I have done is I have gone and flashed Betaflight to the CC3D. You can do that. It's quite tricky though, and I found that it had to be done through LibrePilot. So you can see we've got there just a standard USB connector there. It's the larger one rather than it being the micro. I don't think the camera's going to focus on it because the receiver is in the way, but yeah, we have got a normal USB connector there. And if you go into LibrePilot, so I downloaded that, and then if you go into the firmware tab and then select Halt, it kind of puts the CC3D into like a DFU mode, and I couldn't get it to load into DFU mode in Betaflight, so I wasn't able to flash it that way. But if you go on the GitHub for Betaflight and go to the zip section, you can download the binaries, and then when you halt it, you can go rescue, I think, in LibrePilot, and then you can select flash firmware and then load the binary from that and click I know what I'm doing, and then that will flash the version of Betaflight, the latest version, to this. Now, a problem that you get from doing that is the motor order in LibrePilot is different than in Betaflight. Of course, we have just got these servo leads here though, so you can just switch the motors around. I didn't do that. What I did was I used the new resource option in Betaflight, and I freed up all of the motors bar motor 2 because motor 2 is in the right place, and then I put the commands in to switch the motors around. But it's probably been easier to mess with the pins, but I wanted to get it all working. Another thing you need to make sure that you do if you're switching a CC3D to Betaflight and are using Simon K ESCs is One Shot 125 didn't work, so I had to switch it to PWM as well, and then everything was working. So I have got a X4R receiver plugged into this. You're given the cable for S-Bus, and you can see the connector there as well for S-Bus. You're also given a different cable as well for PWM. Seems a bit of an old school setup, so it doesn't surprise me that they've given a PWM connector as well. I've actually cut 2 of these tabs off. That is because I am powering this camera off one of those spare servo tabs there, so I have just cut that up, and then I can get my 5 volts out there from the back of the ESC as well. That is proper old school, isn't it? Then I have taken the antenna here for the receiver and just put it up the top there. And yeah, I have also added a battery strap underneath. They're not given a battery strap, and I've added some of this silicon 3M stuff as well, otherwise the battery will just slip. So the battery I'm going to use is this 850 milliamp JJ Pro 3S battery, and they say to use either a 500 milliamp 2S or a 1000 milliamp 3S, so I've sort of met them in the middle, 850 milliamp 3S. No idea what flight time I'll get on that. We will take a look. You give them some instructions, but they don't really tell you that much, so I haven't really used them. Nothing about the setup. I think this was meant to be like an RTF because there's information in here of the VTX and also the transmitter, etc. But I just set it up how I know how to set up. So yeah, we got these spinners on here as well. They do slightly come out of the top of the model, but not by much. I think it'd be a little bit too big to fly indoors. These spinners are directional, and you have to put an Allen key through there to tighten up the propellers. Maybe it won't be so bad with just a 2-blade on there. Yeah, but I thought, yeah, what do you think? Really unusual component setup. Maybe it's been done for cheapness, but I think that these days you can probably get like an old Naze or something for the same price as a CC3D, and I don't know about these old 6 amp ESCs either, but I'm going to fly it anyway. And I'm going to be hooking up to my Tyrannus, and for FPV, if it gets that far, I'm going to be using my Fat Shark Dominator HD3s. Okay, let's see what we are dealing with here. Well, it flies. There's not a huge amount of power. That was full throttle there. Try that again just to show you. Full power. It's not dreadful. Oh, I can see one of those legs flailing off, I think. Or is it just... no. It's just something caught on the battery. So very docile in the end. Do I dare to do acro with it? Why not? You only live once, don't you? Yeah, it does acro. It's not a huge amount of power to recover from. What a strange model. But it flies. Not sure how it would fare in a crash. I'm not sure how much battery life it's going to have either. And I don't think those legs will last very long too. Could probably do with a tri-blade on there, but that might be too much for the motors. Well, it seems fairly stable. It's not falling out of the sky yet. Be interested to see how it performs FPV. Well, it's certainly no problem for line of sight because it's quite a big model. And it seems to be keeping its power, so it's not like, you know, it's just going to instantly drain the battery. Well, I reckon probably, or I don't know, 3-minute flight's going to be the max with this battery, I think. But it flies alright, surprisingly. Look how odd this thing looks. That little tiny camera at the front. Okay, that's power completely gone, that was. So, what is that? 2 to 3 minute flight time with that battery. And I'm not sure it could take a bigger battery, you know, either. Probably better on 3-inch props, you know. So my opinion of this model is that I can't recommend it. It does fly, but when I went to fly at FPV, it flew acro fine, but there just wasn't enough power, and when I was coming out of certain maneuvers, the quadcopter would do that pitching back thing. Now that is something that does happen with these models with a cage, and usually the balance fixes that out, so I actually did bring it in for a landing and tried to push the battery further forward. See, this model is designed for a heavier camera at the front and a heavier VTX as well. But no matter what I did, pushing the battery forward or trying to tune it, it would still do that pitching back maneuver, and it was hovering all the time at probably about 70% throttle. So for me, that's no good. I think it needs at least 1806 motors and probably at least 12 amp ESCs, I would say. There's nothing wrong with the CC3D. In fact, it was an experience learning how to flash beta flight with that, so that's something that I have taken away from this year. But I think 1306 motors on a 4-inch is too much. In fact, when I landed it, the motors were red hot, and I'm not sure that this setup would last too long like that. I do think that it may fly with a 3-inch, but then it's a bit of a big model really for a 3-inch blade. You can see there that I'm battling with it when it's pitching backwards. I'm in acro here, by the way. It doesn't do that pitching back thing when it's in angle mode, and I found it easier to fly line of sight. Didn't seem to pitch back at all, but I guess that's because I wasn't really in forward flight when I was doing the line of sight. So when you do FPV, you're flying forward when you're doing a roll, and when I was flying a line of sight, it's just flat, so it didn't have that same behavior. I think if I spent more time on it, then I could get it tuned better, but it doesn't have enough power for me, and therefore I don't think I'll be recommending it. But there you go, that is my review of the L160 II. I'll put a link in the description if you wish to try one. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.